Gonna pop a couple holes here just for the forward-facing sonar. We'll get a look in here, see what we're dealing with, but kind of a secondary basin where you got a big shallow weed flat, a little bit of a bowl in here. And so one of the things we're gonna do a little different, there's two ways of doing this. You can put forward-facing sonar down, see where the fish are, then walk somebody in and drill a hole on top of the fish, or you can drill your holes ahead of time and kind of get everything settled down so that way you can go from hole to hole without drilling and possibly spooking fish. The thing we want to show is how to use a forward-facing sonar to find fish, but also how to use the Vexilar to catch fish. So we've got some fish right over here. We've got some more fish kind of scattered right back here, but we're not going to lug this big unit around. We're going to use it to point us and find fish, and then use the Vexilar to catch, because the Vexilar has got a little bit better separation. You can read the body language of the fish a lot better, and it's a lot more nimble. It's a lot more easy to move from hole to hole, and we're going to have to move around hole to hole today, I'm thinking, because these fish are going to move around as the day progresses. And so for staying on fish, in these little bowls, little secondary basins like this, tell you what, nothing beats that 1-2 punch. Forward-facing sonar and the Vexilar working together.
We'll drop down there, see if we can't get some of these fish. What I found is during the day, they definitely seem to move up in the water column too. And once they get suspended, they're usually pretty aggressive. Just digging. There's just nothing that pulls like those bluegills. There's no doubt when you get a gill on. Just those head shakes and how they just turn and turn and turn in that hole. There he comes. Oh, that's a nice one. Oh, just a beautiful fish. Perfect. Let's get back down there. These fish are just stacked. We found them with the front-facing sonar, and once we located those schools, it was easy to just come over, hop on top of them. Didn't have to lug it with, and literally, Jason said 20 feet that way. I jumped down here with the Vex, and these fish are just stacked. We are here in the Detroit Lakes area, and it's a great area for big bluegills. I've been fortunate to be here. Jason's been up a few times, and we've done a lot of shows around here because in this area we have 412 lakes within close proximity to Detroit Lakes, and many of these lakes don't see a lot of pressure, and many of these lakes are able to produce, trophy-sized bluegill. So what we're going to do today is we're on a lake that has a real big weed flat coming out of it, and it drops down into a deeper basin. And I've been out here, and what I found is it seems like a lot of these bluegills are actually up in the weeds, and they're pretty hard to target up there. But as the sun kind of gets higher in the day, they slide out over that basin, and they seem to be kind of right at that 5, 6, 7 foot mark a lot of times. Like they're coming straight out of that weeds and just over that basin. And these fish are out there feeding. And so we've been targeting them. We're using a small tungsten jig, and we're either tipping it with a wax worm or a plastic. And we have a chance at some really big fish, and that's why we're here today.
Oh, here comes one. There we go. Feels like a good one. Look at that. These fish fight so hard. There, that's a good one. So this little spot that we're in, basically, if you can imagine, 5, 6 foot weed flat and just a little bit deeper water. If you can ever find that, whether it's 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, if you just find a little bowl in that shallow weed flat, they load up with fish. But what's interesting is right now, some of these fish will ride pretty high underneath the ice, which is pretty common for crappies especially, but every once in a while you'll find these bluegills riding a little high too, or you can sometimes find these fish in the top 6 feet of the water column. That's the thing you'll see sometimes too, is late ice, where these fish will ride right underneath the ice. And then also another situation where you'll see fish right underneath the ice, which isn't an ideal situation, is say if you get a shallow lake or a small lake, you get a lot of snow, a lot of ice, slush on the ice, where you start to get lakes that have low oxygen levels. That's where you'll start to see fish right underneath the ice, in the sense that sometimes before a lake will winter kill, these fish will come up where you can almost see them just looking right down the hole. And so two situations where it's not uncommon at all to see fish hugging that top part of the water column. Light ice and real bad winters when oxygen's bad.
Here you go. This is going to be another nice fish. Just bulldogging. Just bulldogging. You know, when they can't come up the hole without turning sideways, you know it's a good one. Gosh, this is fun. Just cooked him. Get those great big ear tabs. You know it's a dandy bluegill. This has been just crazy, one after another. You know, you really get the 1-2 punch by locating them, being able to move right on top of them, and sitting down with your Vex and watch these fish come in. And it's been just, oh, that was a good one. That was a good one. It's been just fish after fish. And you know, we're at this late ice time and it can be some of the most fun. We're just targeting these fish right off a weed flat. And this, oh, another nice fish. These fish have been coming in right off this weed flat and we've been getting them just hanging up over these basins, and it's just been a blast. And there's still more down there. I mean, we're just dropping them in left and right.
Now, not only is a Vexilar very lightweight and nimble as far as going from hole to hole and moving around, but also it's real time in the sense that so often your jigs here and those bluegills there, I mean, they're right on top of you. You're just making what I call micro moves, where you're just barely twitching that tail. You're just barely causing that head to rise, and that fish will come in and kiss it. And you have to be able to watch the reaction of the fish in real time. And so that's why Vexilar is so popular with ice anglers. You have that real-time signal, but also it's a raw analog signal which reveals a lot of information, in the sense that if something's stationary, you're going to get a stationary line, but if that fish moves at all, you're going to get that flutter. And sometimes those fish cock, they'll fan their pectoral fins and they'll change their body posture, and that signal is going to flutter, and you know that fish is about ready to eat, and so you know that you stimulated that fish. And so the information that a Vexilar gives you is crucial when it comes time to rolling up your sleeves and catching fish. There we go. That fish actually slacklined me. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's big enough where I gotta grab it. These are long fish. That's a 6-inch hole. A lot of fish that are in that 8-inch range, I would guess, 8.5. You're just a great eating fish. You know, these types of locations are just a high batting average location, in the sense that we all know that panfish love weeds, although there's not always panfish in the weeds, you know, and sometimes they'll pull out over basins or they'll pull out over secondary basins. But if you can find a trough, a channel, a hole, a bowl, just some type of a deeper depression in that shallow weed flat, that is a high batting average as far as going out there and finding fish. It doesn't matter where panfish swim, panfish seem to love those locations. But don't try to look for too much. If you have an 8-foot flat, if you just have a bowl that's just 2 feet deeper than the rest of the flat, that's all that it takes. And so it doesn't have to be a big pronounced area, just a depression will concentrate these fish.
There we go. It's gonna be a good one. There he is. Just a beautiful, look at that. Blue color, just a beautiful fish. That's awesome. Sun's out, fish are coming out, enjoying late ice. Does it get much better?
Oh, here he comes. There we go. Oh, that spring bobber is so important. Some of these fish just barely touch it. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah. Look at that. That's just a, look at that. Just a thick, beautiful bluegill. You can't even see that drop kick jig. It just ate it. So much fun. There you go. I'm just using a couple of Mackie Paulies. I've got them kind of rigged up piggyback there, going right out the back of the hook. Biggest thing, just make sure they're straight, right behind the hook. And then the other thing is after you catch a fish, make sure you move that knot either towards the back or perfectly center so it's horizontal. I'm using a Palomar knot with 3-pound frost mono, which is kind of my go-to for a lot of panfish. Race to get back down there. These fish are moving around a little bit here, so we've been having to kind of hop around a little bit. Seems like you get on them, you wear out your welcome after a while, then you gotta stay ahead of them and find some new fish to at least get the more aggressive fish and the bigger fish.
You know, we've been on so many fish here for so long, they've kind of scattered now, and I'm still graphing some fish down there, but they definitely aren't as thick as they were. So this is a great time to go and use your forward-facing sonar. I'm gonna go back kind of where we have it set up and just take a look, pan around, see if, you know, if they're just 20 feet that way, 50 feet that way. And, you know, then we'll go back and set up on them with our Vexilars again. And it's just been a great combination. And that's where the forward-facing sonar to me really shines. Cuts that curve. Instead of me going out here and starting to drill a bunch of holes, I can go back, I can just scan the area, and that's what we're gonna do now. They're that way. You know, all this did is it allows me to see that, you know, we want to go to the left. All these are our fish that are suspended. Got our bottom of the lake here, and the fish that we've been targeting are the suspended ones, and we can see that they are just down that way, about 30 feet, 30, 40, 50 feet that way. So we're actually able to just walk right over, drill on top of them, and we'll be back on the fish.
When you look at forward-facing sonar technology, I mean, it's the talk of the industry, you know. I mean, there's some camps that want to outlaw it, there's some people that are championing it, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, technology is here to stay. It's no different than a map chip or spot lock on a trolling motor. There's tools that just make it easier to find and catch fish, and that's been going on since the beginning of time. But when it comes to forward-facing sonar, you definitely need to understand it and understand the limitations in the sense that, you know, you're going to see the bottom, but at the same time, when you're in deeper water, the fish are right on the bottom, you're not going to be able to just pan and sweep and necessarily see those fish. You almost have to wait for those fish to crawl across the bottom of the screen. And with forward-facing sonar, there is a big dead zone where the fish almost disappear into the bottom and come up out of the bottom, almost like a worm coming in and out of the dirt. But you have to remember with fishing is that you get out of fishing what you put into it. In the sense that if you put a lot of effort into using forward-facing sonar, where you're scanning, looking for fish, drilling holes to stay on those fish, and using it as a tool all day, yes, you're going to catch way more fish. But if you don't work any harder at fishing and drill a couple holes, sit down and expect the fish to come to you, yeah, you're going to be able to see them swim by. It's really cool, very entertaining. But the reality is that you might not catch any more fish, okay? And so there's definitely a way to use it. And where this technology shines, where this equipment shines, is for finding fish, especially fish that are suspended less than 30 feet of water. That's where this technology shines. So if you have bluegills or crappies suspended in the water column over a basin, you're going to find them. You're going to be able to see these fish. And the biggest thing is now you got to make a move and get on those fish, and you're going to see all kinds of nuance to that. And it says there's times where every time you try to make a move and drill right over the top of the fish, you spook them away. And so then you go back to drilling grids of holes like we had to do before forward-facing sonar and push the fish back around underneath the hole. But what's so amazing is so often when you have a grid of holes, those fish will concentrate whatever real estate of ice doesn't have any holes. It's like the fish just get pushed away from that. And it's peculiar how those fish end up there. I mean, if you're wondering where to go, if you have a 50-foot patch of ice that hasn't had a hole drilled in it and the whole area is drilled out, go there.
They're here. Have all the technology in the world, you still got to get them to bite. Maybe. Just a hog of a fish. That one was suspended about 6 feet down, which is crazy. These bigger fish definitely seem to be higher up in the water column, that's for sure. Got another one down there at 5 feet, so let's get this one back.
Oh, look at that. Bluegill is pulling out drag. You love that. Oh yeah, that's a nice bluegill. Fills up the hole nice. Ah, I love that. All splayed out. When you look at angling surveys, especially for ice angling, it always amazes me just how popular bluegills are. Big bluegills in particular. You know, when you get fish that are over 8 inches, that's a quality sunfish. When you get bluegills that are over 10 inches, that's a trophy class fish. And there's a lot of lakes in this area that produce really big bluegills. And what I find interesting as well is just how opinions have changed with angling, where it used to be where people would go out and just fill a bucket full of panfish to eat. And reason being is that, in my opinion, bluegills are one of the best eating fish that swims. We love to eat fish. But what we're starting to see is more and more anglers are showing restraint, and they're also showing a lot more selective harvest. If you want to maintain a big bluegill population, just throw back those big males, those big bulls. You know, they've got the bright red or orange chest, they've got the big ear tabs. You can definitely tell the difference between a male and a female bluegill, but focus on the females and focus on that mid-range size fish, and a lot of these fisheries can be maintained. Oh, look at that one. Wow. That is gorgeous bluegill. You know, it's kind of interesting is that we've been definitely kind of wearing out our welcome. We're catch some really nice fish. Boy, that's just gorgeous. Ear tabs. And it seems like we're out our welcome where the fish are left, you know, get hard to catch. But also too, we've been noticing even if people walk up or walk by, it just seems like the fish are gone. And so we've had to settle down a little bit here and get a little methodical and have a little bit of strategy to this, because I think you could definitely spook these fish when they're up in these type of locations. There, that is fun. Love big bluegills. There's some quality fish in this part of the world. If you love to panfish or ice fish, I don't know of too many places better than this area.
You know, one thing I think that is overlooked and super important, especially if we're out here trying to target the biggest fish that are in the school, or, you know, typically the most aggressive fish are going to be the ones that bite, and they're usually the biggest. They got big for a reason, because they eat. And what I'm finding out here is I'm starting high in the water column. I mean, I'm talking, we're in 20 feet of water, and I'm fishing, I begin about 6-7 feet down. And what I'm finding is the most aggressive, usually the biggest fish, come screaming up. You know, if I drop down to that 17-18 foot, a lot of times I'm getting bit, but it's a lot of those little brr, brr, and I know that they're a little bit smaller fish. And I'm looking at my screen and looking at my rod here, because I am down 5 feet and I've got a couple of marks that just came up. And typically those are the fish that you want to target. I want those aggressive fish, I want the bigger fish, and by starting higher in the water column, you can watch those fish actually come all the way from, you know, sometimes all the way down from the bottom, but it's the bigger fish that typically are gonna come screaming up and bite. He's there. There we go. There you go. Big old bluegill. You know, that's what you're looking for. And that's exactly what we're talking about, fishing that high in the water column. I was only 6 feet down in 20 feet of water, and this fish came screaming up. I actually thought it was going to be another crappie. I mean, that's a true, beautiful Minnesota bluegill. And that's what we're out here targeting. And by, you know, taking advantage of the whole water column, a lot of times this is what you're rewarded with. There we go.
This is a good one. Look at that. Oh, look at that. That is a great, great bluegill. Oh my. Oh, just love when they get that knobbed head. That's a gorgeous fish. That is a quality bluegill. Wow. That makes a person's day. And I tell you what, you take a 10-inch bluegill, I mean, that fish might be 10 years old in a lot of these lakes. And so selective harvest is something that we're starting to realize is really important if you want quality bluegill fisheries.